Hello, it's Thursday, and welcome to another episode of the Sussex as Your User Group podcast. It's day something in lockdown. We're still here, we're still doing them, we're still having fun doing them. So, joined as always by Jack. Hey, Jack, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. It's been a busy week, but the weather's getting better, enjoying outside. All good. So this week we've got a special guest with us again. We've got Maria Ferreira from Microsoft, and we're going to be talking this week about responsible AI. So less about technology, more about ethics and what AI is. It should be a really interesting chat. So yeah, at this point I'd introduce Maria. Hey Maria, how you doing?
Hey, thank you for inviting me, guys. Like you said, my name is Maria, and I'm an Azure data and AI specialist, and I work for Microsoft. So I'm really, really pleased to be talking about this very interesting topic, at least personally for me, which is responsible AI. So I thought, like we were talking about this a few moments ago, Ryan, of what is artificial intelligence, and it's a quite interesting thing because everybody talks about AI. What is it? And we kind of went into through the description. Do you mind giving me your
Do you want
view?
me to read the Wikipedia definition of what AI is?
Yeah.
So it says artificial intelligence is intelligence demonstrated by machines, unlike the natural intelligence displayed by humans and animals, which involves consciousness and emotionality. The distinction between the former and the latter categories is often revealed by the acronym chosen. So to me, that means humans and animals have kind of organic intelligence, whereas computers and machines have kind of pre-built intelligence, but they're still following a set of rules. Is that right?
That's the way I interpret it as well. And I think this is really, really interesting because when you think about what AI can do for us, what that artificial intelligence can do for us, it is a technology that is very different from any other technology. It is so different from any other technology that is now considered part of the driver of the fourth industrial revolution. It's going to transform our jobs and our lives for the next 10 years for sure. But as any industrial revolution, it has a lot of good things that the other three revolutions have brought to us. But it also brings quite, interesting challenges because the more powerful the tool, the greater benefit and damage it can cause. That's the way I see it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think, before we go on any further, based on that point, I think it's really important that we call out here that this is our own opinions tonight, guys. So everything we say this evening is our own opinions, not our employers, not people we work with or collaborate with or our partners. This is purely our own opinions, right? So take it on face value, take it with a pinch of salt. This is what we all believe as a three. So, please don't take this as an official Microsoft message or anything like that. This is purely our own opinion. And I
Yeah.
think moving on from that slightly boring admin point that we have to say and make sure that we cover ourselves with, because it is a fairly contentious topic in some areas. I think one question that I'd love to cover that I ask myself a lot, and it's something my wife actually asked me an awful lot: what is the difference between AI and ML? Because
ML.
they can mean the same thing, right? In some scenarios, right? Because it's computers making decisions about things.
So, in my perspective, and I'm happy to hear your opinion as well, Ryan. In my perspective, machine learning, ML is machine learning. Machine learning is part of AI. Okay, AI, like Ryan said, is technology, is machine intelligence. ML is machine learning. So, the ability to oh, got it, guys.
Hey, we're good. We're good. We're good.
It
No.
throws out
This
here.
is it is machine learning is part of AI. You see, like machine learning, it is a service, is an Azure service, which is part of artificial intelligence, like cognitive services, like natural language processing. So machine learning is exactly that. Is the ability to assimilate a particular amount of information and help or aid decisions or make conclusions based on the information that was interpreted during the analysis that was made. So that when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's quite interesting anyway, because we're not yet at the stage. By the way, this is coming completely different from the topic of responsible AI. We're talking about what is artificial intelligence, and is this really artificial intelligence today already? And it's, in my personal opinion, we're not yet at the stage where we have full-blown artificial intelligence. But that's a completely different topic. When it comes to... Go on.
I was just going to say, Maria, it just reminds me of so many films from the 80s and the 90s where, computers become self-aware, and it's kind of like that whole Star Trek thing where, where they can start thinking for themselves, they start fixing each other, improving each other, they start taking over the world. And when I was reading about this earlier, there's a lot of kind of fear in the media and for a lot of, let's call it, influencers. Elon Musk said AI is far more dangerous than nukes a couple of years ago in a conference, and I thought that was really fascinating, considering his company utilizes AI, especially in the automotive world, more so than any other manufacturer. But he himself is kind of fearing it in the way that it's progressing and evolving. So,
but I understand his point. I understand his point, Ryan, because the advancements in artificial intelligence are very different to any other advancements in any other technologies, because of the pace of innovation that we currently have, as well as the proximity of this technology to human intelligence. That's the thing. This has impact in our life, in our personal life, and our social life as well. It has the ability to, if not followed the right rules, to create some serious challenges, which is why it's so important to make sure that we mitigate those challenges, those risks are mitigated. So that's the reason why, in my perspective, we need to pay a lot of attention to the topic of responsible AI.
Yeah, totally.
Especially, go on. Sorry.
No, I took over you.
So especially, I was talking about the pace of innovation. Look at what's going on right now today. Compare it today to 5 years ago, for example, or even 6 years ago. There's loads and loads of AI already being explored in different sectors of the industry today. Healthcare, for example. Today, this is good. It's some really good work, where AI has the ability to assist medical professionals to go through hundreds of records, to draw conclusion quicker and save lives much faster. You would need so much more human brain power and time to achieve the conclusions that we can today. So this is where AI can help. Even in retail, look, behavior analytics, for example, understanding, the behavior of a person, that helps you perhaps in your own life to understand, to save time, or virtual trying rooms, for example, or in FSI, so finance sector. Think about it. Fraud detection, right?
Yeah.
This is something that is really good. Manufacturing, health and safety in manufacturing, predictive maintenance. These are all good things. So it's, again, like I was saying in the beginning of the conversation that we were having, AI is like the other industrial revolutions, has the ability to absolutely change our lives for better. We just need to make sure, because we are now in the middle of it, we need to make sure that we follow really strong guidelines to avoid, for example, biased technology that is developed with, our own. We know biased brains exist. We know that there are people with their own personal opinions. We need to make sure that when machine learning algorithms are being developed, they are not reflecting these biases, and that the decisions that they make are according to several important principles, which is, 6 of them. And being a Microsoft employee, I can tell you that Microsoft has created 6 very important principles that help mitigating these challenges that we see within this technology. And I'm really keen to discuss those principles with you. I don't know if you're already aware of them, but I'm really keen because you can see how they can make a difference.
I think it would be good to kind of outline some examples of what good AI is. And we've seen loads of this in the media, especially around the pandemic, where Microsoft AI technology has been used as part of the research for COVID-19 vaccines and that stuff, which is awesome. But also Microsoft has been in the media for what could be deemed as bad AI. And I was reading about this. I don't know if you saw this, Maria, but The whole Pentagon contract in the US, where
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft and Amazon were bidding for it. And in my mind, it was like, well, if it's going to be used for combat and things like that, with smart weapons using AI in a war situation, that's a bad thing, right? Giving a country potentially an advantage over something else to take somebody's life. That's awful. But at the same time, Brad Smith's response was, we wanted to be part of it, so they've got a seat at the table to talk about the ethics of where AI is used in the right way and not used in the wrong way. So that was a really interesting response to that, I thought. But it kind of conjures up a lot of these different scenarios where AI is becoming more of an important part of our lives. Look at autonomous driving, or using smart glasses and things like that. It's just becoming more prominent, and there are those ethics decisions in every single one of these technologies.
Absolutely. So Ryan, you just touched a principle, one of the 6 key principles that Microsoft has in responsible AI, which is reliability and safety, no harm to human life, and the ability to override a decision that the machine that is made by an algorithm of a machine by a human, but by a human, so by a person, really. So one of the 6 key principles is exactly like that: reliability and safety, which is to make sure that a system operates in a reliable way, safe, and is consistent under normal circumstances and abnormal conditions as well. No harm for human life, like I've just mentioned. I think it is also perhaps important to talk about and other principles. The example that you mentioned there also, for me, touches a little bit on the accountability one. So just to give an overview, the 6 key principles are fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, transparency, and accountability. And I've talked about the reliability and safety. Let's move down to the accountability one, because you just mentioned potential harm for human life. So ultimately, the people that design and deploy artificial intelligence systems should be accountable for how their systems operate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is perhaps a very important, one of the most important principles, because the biggest question is, hey, I'm just going to blame it on the machine and I have no accountability. This is not, that's a very important principle nowadays. And I have some good examples. For example, I'm thinking about a particular driver of a Tesla vehicle that was driving under, he was under influence. So he was drunk, but he wasn't driving. The car was in autopilot. So he was arrested, and in his defense, he thought, "Well, hang on a minute, no, but blame it on Tesla because ultimately, this is autopilot. What's the problem? No, hang on a minute. You still have the ability to, again, reliability and safety. You still have the ability to override that, and it's the responsibilities for you not to be drunk. It's not of Tesla. This is at least my personal opinion, right? So it's ultimately with the person that was in this situation driving the car, in my perspective.
Yeah, I think that really comes back. Sorry, Ryan. That really comes back to the whole thing of like when you enable autopilot, right? You have to like touch the wheel every like 30 seconds or something like that, and it will warn you. So that's almost reinforcing that principle of you are accountable, you are responsible for this, because you have to reinforce and tell the car that you're still there and with it, right? You're not falling asleep, or you've not taken, you're paying attention off the road or anything like that. So that's almost like, Tesla's get out of jail free card for this, or not get out of jail free card. That's a really bad way of wording it, but they're making the user or the driver having to reconfirm their presence and awareness every 30 seconds or a minute to reinforce that principle of you're accountable for this. We're assisting you, not doing it for you.
Absolutely.
But won't that change though? Won't it, as autonomous driving becomes more mature, and I think we could do a whole podcast on autonomous driving, mainly because it's close to my heart and everything. But
I'd never have guessed.
Yeah, you know me too well. But I think as it matures, right, that's a really good use of AI. If you have an inexperienced driver and there's a hazard in the road and the AI is able to avoid a collision, via connected cars and all this other stuff, or you could go down to the pub and it takes you home, completely autonomously. So there's no longer the risk of drink driving. It'll be interesting to see how stuff evolves in the next 10 years.
So that example, I was thinking maybe not the 100%. Is it there's a situation there with reliability and safety and accountability at the same time? But the example that you just mentioned there, I think it's quite interesting to call out one of actually a Uber, a self-driving Uber. I think it happened in March 2018. And what happened was that self-driving Uber struck and killed a pedestrian in Arizona.
Yep.
And that what happened was that a year later, Uber was actually exonerated of any criminal liability. However, the driver could face charges of manslaughter. Again, who was driving the car?
Yeah, nobody. So yeah, how do you account blame?
But it's how you operate, right? So it still has the ability to override the machine decision. That's why it's like autopilot. You're mentioning it, Jack. Unless it has a failure, unless the system had a failure, and that's different. That's again, it goes to reliability and safety. It shouldn't have a failure in the point that you cannot override the decision of the machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's at least how I see it. So I have got another of good examples, which make responsible AI such an important topic to follow those particular guidelines. I think one of my, I can't say it's one of my favorite ones, but I think it's definitely interesting to talk about, because I got confused when I was going through the understanding what it is that these principles really are. I got confused between fairness and inclusiveness, because for me, anything that is inclusive is fair. However, it is actually quite important to divide, in my perspective, to divide those two principles. So, for example, fairness is all about making sure that everybody is treated in an equal way. So examples could be a recruitment software, right? Making sure that, again, those biases that typically we might have as humans are not passed to the algorithm. Whereas inclusiveness is very different, is about making sure that we resolve a problem for the minority. So, for example, someone with a disability in reading or colorblind or anything like that, if we solve that problem, we actually we solve the problem for the majority. So there are two different principles, but very important too. So if you think about fairness, let's say, for example, did you know that it looks like women and men promote themselves very differently from a profile perspective? So men tend to talk about themselves like rock stars, for example, and women don't tend to do that. So the way they promote themselves on CVs is different as well. And in my view, it's very important that, if you're going to go through hundreds of CVs, like thousands and thousands of CVs, you're a big company, that if you're a recruiter, that typically will identify more with how a certain CV is positioned on a recruiter site, that doesn't pass to the machine learning algorithm, because we need to be treated fair, not the way that you sell yourself. It's actually your capability. At least they're both the same. That's at least the way I see it. What do you think, Jack?
I think it's a really interesting topic, that one, and I think I always play this one when I'm thinking about it, is in sort of like credit checking and stuff in sort of that financial aspect. I think it's a really good way to think about it. There's no reason why, based on anything to do with our personal lives or anything like that, should we have an impact on our credit decisions, right? To get loans or mortgages or anything like that. It should be completely fair based on the fact of, can we pay our bills, and are we doing things that are financially relevant? It should have no impact, nothing from our lives or where we come from or our ethnicity or race or our background should have any impact on that. For example, anything like my father has done in the previous life shouldn't impact my credit decisions because I'm the person taking that out. So that's a really good fairness scenario in my eyes, that based on my family's previous history, that shouldn't impact my credit decision or anything like that. And the same, almost in that recruitment scenario, Maria, the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter about any of my history of the family. You're only interested in my capabilities for the role. And am I a good fit and am I a good person to achieve the job that you're advertising and want somebody to fit for? Have I got that correct? Have I understood that correctly, or am I a little bit off there? It'd be really interesting to hear your opinion.
That's exactly the way I see it. I mean, the reason why I called that out was actually because there are situations, known publicly situations, where we need to make sure that those algorithms are drafted in the right way. They're developed in the right way, and they're being fair. You see, it's fair, because if it's not fair, what you're gonna imagine that the algorithm. Let's flip it completely different. Let's say, so we just talked about we're following the principle of fairness and it's all going right. Let's say we don't, right? Let's say we don't. Let's think about an algorithm that is designed in a way that says, oh, look, this particular profile is very successful within this company. And you just get more of the same every time. Where's the diversity there? Where's the inclusion? Because you see, that's the thing. It's like machines, and artificial intelligence is very good, but it needs to be designed in the right way. And those principles are very important. Fairness is one of them. Inclusion is another one.
And would you say they work really hand in hand, like fairness and inclusion, all the time? And because inclusion solves the problem for the minority. So using that example there of, we don't want carbon copies of profiles that work well. We want a diverse and inclusive mix of different candidates and different people to make our company diverse and inclusive, and factor all these things in to make us ultimately a fair place. Is that really how they work? Like,
Yeah,
inclusiveness feeds into fairness?
So this is one of the challenges I had to actually differentiate those two principles, because the way I am, being inclusive is being fair. So it's really hard to divide for me. However, the way I see it is, inclusiveness is making sure that whatever the solution that you're creating is makes people inclusive. A good example would be the subtitles that we get when we today with PowerPoint, immediately subtitles. So that is making sure that inclusiveness is in practice. Fairness is more about the example that you gave within the like the loan application.
Yeah,
for
okay,
example.
that's interesting, and that's a good way of picking it apart. I think, because a lot of the PowerPoint tools and Office tools are very inclusive, or adding capabilities to make things inclusive, which is AI that we probably all use and take for granted, but don't realize actually it's following a really key principle of AI by making people giving people an inclusive option.
It is.
So yeah, that's a good way of
That's
thinking about it.
exactly what it is. So the way I understood it was, think about resolving a problem for the minority, for a minority. If you resolve the problem for a minority, you're most likely resolving a problem for the majority as well, like the subtitles.
I
Right?
love that. That's a great way of thinking about it.
So in some of your customers, Maria, do you see it as, do they have the perception? I mean, take the retail sector for example. Do they see it as a threat to their jobs? Because if you're doing like things like profiling of shoppers and heat maps in stores, and before AI was about, that kind of analysis would be done manually, right? Who's buying what stock? People would look at tables of things and look at numbers, and all that stuff would be calculated manually. Do you get that kind of perception from customers that see it as a threat to their jobs, like we do in other parts of cloud and things like that in that way? Or is it just largely embraced because it's going to make them a lot more, give them a new capability that they never had before?
So this is, I love that you've asked me this question, Ryan, because you know that we've worked together in other territories before. And I used to be an infrastructure specialist myself. I see no difference from the attitude in retail customers from an infra perspective to an AI is technology. What so the approach that I normally see them taking is is the same approach that they take to new innovative technology. So as the analogy I'm trying to make here is, imagine the adoption of moving from a on-premises data center to the cloud, to then is the same type of resistance that you would get, for example, in terms of job security, to apply any new technology that can do that. So there's no difference. Mm-hmm. What I see, luckily, in the customers that I've had the pleasure to work with within the retail territory, is a really eager, like they are eager to develop. So nowadays, if you don't change, you die, right?
Yeah.
Look at what COVID did, right? Yeah. So the digital transformation that COVID has brought into multiple sectors, including retail, has been immense. So people need to develop to adapt to this change pretty quickly. Otherwise, you can't. You need to adapt to survive.
Retail is especially in the last 12 months, I've seen a lot of where people have been forced to, where their online shop has just exploded, where they may have a high street presence typically. They've started to use things like chatbots a lot more for customer service, where, in the pandemic, they would have been completely inundated with people phoning up and they can't deal with calls. So the use of chatbots has been, quite prominent there. But also the whole logistics behind the scenes, where they start to look at fully automated warehouses, and they've got AI in place where they're doing, robots are effectively going to pull things from shelves, and they know exactly where things are in a warehouse. All of that stuff is feeling like it's maturing really, really quickly in this space, especially over the last couple of years, to make retail just much more efficient, and they're getting the edge over their competitors by using AI and ultimately data that they're harvesting from AI to give them that competitive edge.
Yeah, I would say, the situations I see more is on the analytics side. I wouldn't call it AI immediately, but I am seeing a big take in AI, particularly from CPG customers too. So that's retail and CPG, to understand the behaviors, but also on health and safety type of approach. So yeah. So the principle. So we've talked. I kind of lost track of what. Oh, actually, I lost track of the principles because it's quite important. We've talked about so much things. We've talked about in length quite a lot around the fairness. As I was talking, I have to talk about this one, because this one is a particular situation where you have an Asian man putting the passport picture and submitting the passport picture, and it's constantly declining because the application says the eyes are closed. This is what I'm saying. The algorithms need to be designed in a way that you're just not going to exclude someone because it doesn't have the same characteristics as the other person's. And this is not about inclusiveness like I thought initially. It's about fairness. I'm going to treat you the same way as I treat anyone in the same similar situation. That's
really interesting, because I instantly went, this has got to be an inclusive feature.
No,
and then as soon as you say it's fairness, I'm like, okay, no, you're right. It is fairness. It's fairness. Not inclusive.
Yeah, I have to say, I really had to understand this, because again, for me, what do you mean? being inclusive is being fair. However, they are very two different principles. Fairness is about making sure that you're not excluding anyone and avoid exclusion from someone that is within the same situation. You're being fair. Inclusiveness is all about making sure that the solution that you are developing is inclusive. So it can be used by everybody. That's how I see it in the best possible way.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I like that. That's a good way of keeping the delineation.
Yeah, so it wasn't easy for me, and I still sometimes say, oh, is this so there are certain scenarios that you can think about which one of this is. Sometimes it's a lot of them. So I have one which I'm going to launch you the challenges. Now that we've talked about majority of the principles of responsible AI, we've talked about the privacy and security and the transparency as well. I think they are cool principles, but I'm going to give you a challenge on this one. So this one is a algorithm that was designed that what happened was that, let me see if I have it here. Yes, I have it here. I'll share it with you in a minute. So, all right. So it was a pneumonia study. Okay. So this was about predicting the pneumonia risk. And basically what they were looking was to understand to predict your pneumonia risk level, to decide whether you're going to stay in a hospital or not admitted to the hospital. So if you're low risk, we're going to give you antibiotics, chicken soup, colas if you're feeling better. If you're not feeling better, sorry. The high risk, which was going to be admitted to the hospital. And what happened here was that they found out that people with asthma who present pneumonia, so typically people with asthma who present pneumonia go to emergency ER immediately, right away. So they get the highest standard of medical care immediately, and they're often admitted to hospital and realize the better outcomes, right? The thing about this algorithm is that because people with asthma were more careful with their health conditions, actually they didn't get admitted to the hospital. Hang on.
Oh, okay. So the infection, the severity of the symptoms were less because they were more mindful of it in the first place, despite the fact that they're higher risk to intensive care.
Yes. So what happened was that the algorithm was kind of thinking that, it looks like asthma patients,
like lower risk, effectively.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Skewed
interesting.
the data. Yeah.
So
that's tough to work out which is that fairness again, because it shouldn't matter about the fact they have asthma. As in, is that a key thing to take away there?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So this could be an example of safety and reliability, because the algorithm was trained as an accurate black box, but didn't know what was inside. So first and foremost, could be safety and reliability, because of the goal was to predict your pneumonia risk level, but actually it didn't predict the truth, right? The actual truth. Because what happened was that, as we established, basically they kind of thought that they had lesser risk, basically. So the pattern is, it's correct, because the asthma patient gets all these treatments, so they are at lower risk. However, if you use this model to make the decision, it would hurt asthmatics, right? So that's not safe to use, right?
True.
So exactly. So because then now we're talking about reliability and safety. But there's another example here too, which is a transparency example that I wanted to talk about a little bit. That transparency principle is making sure that the decision algorithm is clear, that we understand what are decisions being made and why. So if the algorithm is a black box and you don't know why what this decision is being made, this is not transparent, right? It gets worse if it then doesn't follow the reliability and safety issues.
No, that makes perfect
That's
sense.
quite
I
hard.
suppose, yeah. Everybody needs to know what you're making decisions based upon, right?
I was going to say that must get harder to track as these algorithms get more complex. So that's one scenario, right, with asthma and pneumonia. But if you have a black box that does it for 1,000 different diseases with all every single possible health condition in the world, how do you effectively track that it's making those decisions in the right way? As it matures, it's going to be incredibly hard to kind of keep it honest and keep it safe. It's just where all that testing comes in, I suppose. But yeah, I can imagine it being quite a task to achieve that.
But of course, this is not all the time. This is why you have these key principles, right? So the principles are there to avoid getting into these traps. But this is a challenging, we don't have all the answers. We just have these principles. Make sure, well, we don't just have these principles. There's more than that actually Microsoft is doing. But these 6 key principles are incredibly important. We also have an ecosystem to support our company approach, which is called the Ether Committee. Is basically made up of a lot of senior executives across the company, from research, loads of areas of the business, so from research to engineering to legal operations and sales. What they do is they form these working groups specifically focused on developing these tools and resources to make sure that our principles are tangible, but also they give us forward thinking in perspective of what's to come. So that's another thing that's going on. We also have, I don't know if you've heard, guys, of the Office of Responsible AI, the Aura. What the Aura does is coordinates the company approach on artificial intelligence, and it also administers and maintains responsible AI governance. So all of these, you can go to microsoft.com/AI, and there's a lot of guidance there as well. Then we have our standards as well, governance, requirements, guidance, all of that. So it's not, and it's a combination of all these things, starting with the principles, and then understand. So starting with the principles at the core of things, like with these 6 principles, introduce good practices as well, use good tools and governance, and all of this, is shared in publicly.
Yeah, I think that's really nice to see, right? We share everything, right? It's that open source culture again that Microsoft are big on now, that we're not keeping this for ourselves. This is very out there, and we want to share this so that it's better for everyone. I would say that's probably the key, and it's almost like going back to being transparent and accountable, right? We're giving everybody access to everything we're doing. We're not hiding anything.
Yes, absolutely. So can I give you another challenge, guys?
Go for it.
All right. This I'm gonna pick on you, Jack. Is this gonna be fairness or is it gonna be inclusiveness? Okay.
That's the toughest one. That's hard.
I know.
Go for it.
So let's say that you are translating from Turkish. By the way, Turkish is a special structure that the third pronoun does not have a gender. Okay. So you're translating from Turkish, and you when you do the translation from Turkish to English, the translation is: he is a doctor, she is a nurse, he is an engineer. Now remember that I've told you that the structure in the Turkish language does not have a gender.
Surely that's got to be fairness. That's what I'm going to go for. Yeah, right. Give me
Well
my
done,
AI
Jack.
900 right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, we can make a game out of this, right? Because it's quite interesting, really. But these things happen. You see, these things
Yeah,
happen, and
that's tough.
it is. This is, yeah. But like, because what are you going to do then,
Yeah,
right?
like how? Yeah, and I think the key thing there that for me was the gender hints and clues that were making me think, and I was aware of those things, as in, there's no reason why it matters of who does what role, and that's the key in that for me. It's not an inclusivity thing. It's a nobody anybody can do any of those jobs, so it's just about being fair.
Spot on. So I have another one for you. Can I? I mean, I'm on a roll here,
Go for
guys.
it. Go for it.
But maybe this is going for Ryan. I'm not going to tell you the principle. I think you're going to know about this. But this is actually quite unknown. I don't know. It's not new at all. I just thought this was quite of an interesting one. It's an interesting story where Target figured out that a teen girl was pregnant before her father did. So the story is that basically Target, if as a company that Target is, the way that they, obviously if you gain a mother in this third semester, which is when they buy majority of the new things, you have the ability to most likely win them for a long time as a customer, right? So they were targeting a young woman that she was still in high school, but it was the father that actually learned about this. And the way he learned was because the Target was sending emails and publicity to his daughter. And he came up to the store, and then he started shouting at the manager, "What are you doing to my daughter? Are you trying to get her pregnant or what? Are you incentivizing my daughter to be pregnant? Because she's still in high school, for God's sake." And the manager didn't know what was going on at all. So he was like, "I don't even know what's going on." Truth be told, that the gentleman then went back and then he figured out actually his daughter was truly pregnant. And he learned in my perception, not the best way. So this, for me, what do you think, Ryan? Is this is the principle that we potentially we would get here? We would apply here. Hint is not someone right. Is one. I didn't speak about it yet, so.
You haven't spoken about this. Oh, okay. So this is one of the ones I don't know about. Okay. Weirdly, I initially thought safety. It's probably, I know it's not that, but I kind of thought that, if he wasn't aware that his daughter was pregnant, and no, forget that. I'm completely barking up the wrong tree.
That's
so
okay.
I'll let you give us the right answer.
It's privacy and security, and the reason why I think you might have thought about safety is because our brains tend to associate security with safety. So it's privacy. Yeah, it's privacy and security, which is basically making sure that you're entitled to your privacy, right? And this is, this is a principle that should have been followed in this particular situation. So this is not. I mean, guys, I don't want this to be talk about. Oh, look at that! They're not following this. It's not following. It's not that. This is a challenging thing. We've just talked about the principle of fairness that translates from Turkish, which doesn't have that pronoun, right? It doesn't have gender before the pronoun. So what are you going to do? Like, this is challenging. This is why we don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. We're learning through this. But as long as we implement the principles and we follow the guidelines and we think about the people that are developing these algorithms, it's quite important. Now, this is more my personal take. I think a diverse and inclusive team is incredibly important. I think I'm not the only one thinking about that, because different perspectives, again, this is my personal take, different perspectives contribute to a more neutral ground that can actually align with these principles, because these principles can be subjective as well, right?
Yeah, I always think about this in like a sense of, when you see those like hexagon charts of like attributes, and like I'm thinking like FIFA and football stats here, like how fast somebody is, how good at somebody is at shooting and stuff like that. But they've got like different key criteria, and actually if you pick a fairly, if there was 5 of me on the team, it's going to be very biased as in the graph into one area or a couple of key skills. But I agree with you, in my opinion, if by making it diverse and including lots of other people that are very different to me and come from different backgrounds and all of those different pieces, we actually get a fuller coverage. We span out and that graph becomes full. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good way of putting it, well-rounded.
I think so. Otherwise, imagine it's like, all Maria's in the room. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's always important, a different perspective.
And is that what, is that something that is, and again, part of, if we went to Microsoft.com/AI, is that something we'd find? Is that something that we're moving towards as a company, like providing guidance about you should build, to challenge responsible AI and deal with AI responsibly, you should be going down a more building a diverse team route, or, is that something we're going towards, or is it, what's the guidance there?
I have not seen that myself. I know that Microsoft is very interested in diversity and inclusion, as you can imagine, even as a company. I haven't seen the guidance myself for the responsible AI principles. But if you think, not on a particular diversity and inclusion associated with the AI principles. The AI principles are there to be followed, and we followed with all the, with the ETA committee, with the Office of Responsible AI, with all our standards. We identify roles and responsibilities. So everything that I've told you before, from the principles to the guidelines, to the tools, to the governance, all of that. I do not know if, I would imagine maybe, but I do not know. That was my personal take.
No, fair enough. So I suppose, to bring this sort of round to an end, how would you say that people should go about this and tackle this for, where do people go to learn more? How do people go and educate themselves about this topic more? Obviously Microsoft.com/AI seems to be a key place, but, where are the other places that people can go? Is the AI exam that we've got, is that something that's worth people doing?
Actually, I'm really pleased that you've asked that.
It's been on my list to try and take.
Seriously,
but I just never got around
to it. It worked for me, Jack. This is how I could differentiate between, so the AI 900 one, which is, I believe is the fundamentals one, which is less about the technology, is a lot about the principles, does give you that notion of what the difference between the principles, and that's how I got to learn them quite well. So because they give you, the exam is all about exercises of who is this AI? Sorry, forget. So they give you, is this privacy and security, or is this diversity? Is inclusion? Sorry, is this inclusion, or is this fairness? And I remember that when I was even testing myself, I was like, I'm really confused about this, but then I got it. So definitely that is quite of a good approach, and obviously Microsoft.com/AI as well.
That's interesting. So I'm going to go and put the AI exam on my list then. I don't know about you,
Ryan.
I love it.
I love it. I actually like that exam.
Interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I really liked it. And even if you don't take the exam, I'm exam oriented. I need to, not that the exams give me that much more, but for me it's important because it gives me a target and then a measure, right? And I really learn very well under pressure. So I like that. It worked for me. But obviously, if you don't have to take the exam to know the topics, you can go through the AI 900 training, and that gives you that as well. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it does have some videos, which is good as well.
Fantastic. I think that's a really good kind of intro into what AI is and the ethics. I find it fascinating, but I'd love to go to how we translate that into maybe more of a technical chat around the products available in Azure for AI, what they could be used for, some use cases. So perhaps we'll welcome you back for another time, Maria, to talk about the actual Azure services that underpin our AI offering. But I found that chat fascinating, and it's really refreshing to talk about this, openly and in this depth. So yeah, thanks for joining us. It's been a really great chat.
No problem. Thank you for having me, guys.
No worries. Yeah, you've blown my mind, and I think
Really?
yeah, lots to take in. There's so much. Like my brain's just like thinking about so many different principles, and is it this and is it that? I'm gonna have to go and do the exam. That's the only way I'm gonna know. I'm gonna have to go and take it. So yeah, again, thank you, Maria,
Good.
for joining us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.